Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. My name is Caroline Heward and I'm known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, and I'm also USA Global TV and Radio's resident therapist. Our show today is Talking Heads, and I am an expert presenter on today's topic, which is part of the Mind and Body Connection series. The topic tonight is Together, the Role of Family Bonds and Coping with Terminal Illness. And I'm going to look at ways of support for your loved one that has the terminal illness, as well as support in terms of the family bonds and how the family come together to support your loved one as well as each other. So let's begin. It's important to be there for your loved one, and no matter what way your family role normally is. And it's important to be present for your loved one who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness in whatever way they need. They might just need to speak. They might just need you as a sounding board. They might just need you to listen. And they might be angry because it's happened to them, especially if it's a parent and they're leaving their children behind, when they feel that things are not finished, not done, and they haven't done everything they wanted to do. It's a time to be there to support them in whatever way that they need that's possible, whether it be practical or physical or emotional. And even if they just want to cry, even if they just want to be angry, to be there in whatever way they need. It's important to not tell them that they shouldn't be feeling whatever they're feeling. If they're feeling tired, allow them the grace to say, and not put them right or wrong. Just allow them to be however they are feeling. Because all sorts of things will come up for the person that has been diagnosed with a terminal illness. And they are trying to reconcile it with themselves as well as telling all of the family. And it's important to understand that they are trying to grapple with what needs doing. And there is lots of practical things that they need to do, as well as the emotional stuff. And it can be a very big roller coaster ride for the person that has had the diagnosis. If it's a parent, a mother or your father, then if there are siblings, there will be a coming together of what needs doing. Also, the person that's being diagnosed will also want to look at what they need to do to make sure that they are complete. Always listen. It doesn't matter what they are saying, because they are going to be in a roller coaster of emotions and things that need doing. And when they consider what hasn't been done, they will look at having to do everything. So they'll almost get very practical and get frustrated that they can't do everything that they want to do. Silence is important. Giving the person space to say, to be, and to allow whatever comes up for them, giving them the freedom. Silence is an advanced counselling tool, and when you are silent with someone, It allows everything that they need to say or do, or whatever emotions come up to come up. I've frequently gone into a place of silence, and it's surprising how emotions can release in that silence without needing to try and justify what they should be or shouldn't be thinking or feeling or saying. All sorts of irrational thoughts and emotions will come up, and they won't be able to make sense of them. And at the same time, they're not looking for making sense, because it's all a roller coaster and they're in the moment of whatever they are experiencing. And at the same time, there's all the practical medical things that they need to sort out. So allow them to express whatever it is that they need to. There's a variety of emotions that can come up for the family and for the loved one that has been diagnosed. Sadness, fear, anxiety, anger, shock. Shock, yes. I want to just look at that for a moment. The person that has been diagnosed will be in a state of shock. And shock can make us feel quite numb. And especially when the family are told, it puts them into a place of not only shock, sometimes denial and disbelief. And these sound like a grieving process, because it is. When the person has been diagnosed and they start telling family, they've already had to deal with it themselves, and then they start building the courage to tell family. And with each phone call, there will be an emotional release. There will be an experience of reliving the diagnosis all over again with each call. Also, what can come up for everyone, every member of the family, if they are close, whether they're in the single family unit or the extended family unit, they will feel a level of existential dread that the life has a termination time. And they will be feeling uncomfortable about the fact that that time is imminent. And I did hear not so long ago that you can die if you just walk out in the middle of the road and you get knocked over by a car or a bus. And that's true. And I felt that comment was to trivialize or to understand that we all die at some point. But when somebody's been diagnosed with a terminal illness, it's like a living death. And you are living it with them as a member of the family, as well as the person that has been diagnosed. It also brings up the anticipatory grief, like a living, existing grief. Now, there's an advert campaign that's running in the UK at the moment on Alzheimer's disease. And it's very poignant because it talks about you say goodbye 4 times to the person that has the illness. You say goodbye at the point that they've been diagnosed. You say goodbye at the point they start to deteriorate. You say goodbye at the point that they are no longer able to look after themselves and they need extra care and extra help. And you finally say goodbye when they pass away. And the further goodbye is the funeral. So we say goodbye a number of times. And sometimes for some people in the family, it's a relief when they're saying goodbye for the final time, because the person that has been in the terminal illness has been suffering, and they need a place of inner peace. It's not wrong and it's not right. It simply is that we don't want to watch our loved ones suffer. We don't want to watch them deteriorate. We don't want to watch them lose weight, not be able to do things, forget things, not have the energy. That this is a part of the process of dealing with a terminal illness, especially if there is medical care, palliative care, and also chemotherapy if it's cancer. The treatments themselves can cause all sorts of uncomfortable and undeniably difficult symptoms, and sometimes the symptoms from the medication can be worse than the actual illness. But then it's a choice that the person that's going through the terminal illness chooses. Some people don't choose to go through medication, and some people suffer just the same. So it's important to respect the wishes of the person that has the terminal illness, despite no matter how hard it is for you, especially if they're feeling very sick and they're going through something like chemotherapy, to be there, whatever their choice is, and to also be there in support if they decide to stop medication. It's not because they're choosing anything over you, it's because they're choosing not to suffer in the same way anymore. It's important to be there in whatever way that you can be. And it's important not to ignore anything that comes up for you or for the person that has been diagnosed. It's equally important to make sure that you also take care of yourself as well as the person that has the terminal illness. Because sometimes we can get caught up with all the appointments, all the different medications, and we can get caught up with all the practical things that need to be done. But we forget somehow to take time out to do things, even if it's just mind time out. It could be that you take a walk. But it's important to take that step for you as a member of the family, whatever role that you are playing in that family in terms of the person's illness. It's right that you take time for yourself to look after yourself in what your needs are so that you can be the best for yourself and be best for your loved one. Need to keep doing activities, both you as the family member and your loved one, and allow the space for them to come to family gatherings, to do the parties or the get-togethers or the meals out if they want to. Don't just write them off that they're too unwell, because they might just want a change. They might just want a reprieve from how they're feeling. And even if it is a phone call, they might feel different. And even if you talk about something else that's apart from the illness, it gives them some reprieve, it gives them some light, and it gives them something else to focus on. It's important to understand that when somebody has a terminal illness, that it's an elephant in the room. And sometimes some members of family avoid the topic, and they will talk about everything and anything apart from the elephant in the room. There will be members of family that will feel it difficult, and so they avoid the topic because they don't want to face it. I call it burying your head in the sand. Difficult to face, so you don't face it, so there's other conversations. But it is crucial that you do look at the elephant in the room if you're a family member, because in doing that, you can address your anxieties and your difficulties as well as your loved ones. The health of you and your loved one is crucial. If you don't look after yourself, make sure that you get enough sleep and that you have enough control over what's going on in terms of your own life as well as helping your loved one. You need to find the space to look at end-of-life plans. It's not easy to talk about, and your loved one that has been diagnosed with a terminal illness will want to get their affairs in order. It might feel challenging, but they will want to sort out their affairs. wills, a living will, even sorting out things like the wardrobe, sorting out things that they've not worn for a long time, paperwork, things that they feel that they just let slide, and now there's an urgency somehow to get things in order. Be there for them and be respectful of what they want to do next. Honour what they feel they need to do in the order they feel they need to do it, because you're not in their space, you're in the space of support, and you don't know truly what's going through their mind. They are going through all sorts of emotions, feelings, and inadequacies about not having everything in order. So there will be times that they will talk about the practical legal things that need doing. There might be times that they'll talk about the practical home things that need doing. And there will be times that they will talk about the practical things in terms of their health and what they need to help them, to support them, assistance, what they need to keep okay throughout the time of their illness. Family are always going to come together. It is a thing that happens. Family members and caregivers will come together in the way that's right for them. It's important to do so. It's also important to recognise your own boundaries of what's possible for you versus what's possible for each member of the family. It's also important to recognise where you're located, how much time it takes to travel, and also really important to understand when you get there what your role is. And roles are assigned, whether they be mentally assigned or whether you come together in the way that's right for you. When there's phone calls that are going around with the diagnosis, sometimes we just step into the role that we've probably stepped into when we were a child or when we were an adolescent. And it might not be the role that's appropriate for you to step into, but the role that you step into is sometimes very long-wielding. So decide, be considered, and be there for your loved one as well as yourself. I did have a phone conversation with somebody very recently who had advised me that he lost both of his parents. And he said he gave up his work. He had a business and he gave it up, and he travelled and set up home near where his family were, his mum and his dad. And he completely focused on his family and his parents until they both died. And the second parent died within 3 months of the first. He left his business to somebody else to look after. He had staff and believed that that was the right thing to do. And as a consequence of that, his entire business folded. He didn't have a business, and he didn't have the financial support to support himself and his family in the way that he needed to, because he'd taken his eye off the business. And in having that conversation with him, he also said he wouldn't change anything. He would still do what he did, not in hindsight, in a different situation of knowing what's happened. And that's really interesting, because it's important to understand what's right for you. What's right for you might not be right for each member of the family, but that's something that was right for him, and then he decided to do something different. But that's not wrong to do that. So never judge a family member that does that or a family member that doesn't, because we all have different things that we have to deal with. And so what's right for one person might not be right for another. There isn't any right or wrongs. But what does happen is family members can start shouting the odds about what you should be doing versus what you are doing. Take on board what is said, and if it resonates with you and if it triggers you, deal with what the triggers are. If it doesn't resonate with you, then listen. because each family member is going through their own grieving process. Each family member is going through their own process of making it work for them. So if they are angry, allow it. If they are crying, allow it. And if they are practical when you're not feeling practical, just be there, because each member of the family is grieving in their own way. There are 5 stages of family grief, and each stage is encompassing on the last, and each stage builds on each stage. And the first stage, it includes everyone. It includes everybody that's within the family. It is not specific to any one person. And in fact, when I'm talking about family here, it could be people that have a significant connection with the loved one that has just had the diagnosis. So this isn't just blood family. This can be people that have a very close relationship, and they will be in that grieving process as well. Saying goodbye. As I mentioned earlier, saying goodbye can be difficult. And the first saying goodbye is at the time of the diagnosis. It's called a long goodbye. The long goodbye is because it's not the normal to say goodbye by going through a terminal illness, but this is a living goodbye. As I mentioned earlier, the living, grieving will. This is when the person has the intensity of knowing there is a mortality date, an end. And it is crucial that each person in the family acknowledge how they're feeling emotionally, practically, physically. It could be that you're handling everything practically, but then from the perspective of how the mind and body connect, that you might come out in rashes, you might come out in bowel problems such as irritable bowel syndrome or colitis, or you might come out with losing hair. So you're handling everything, but then the body is connected to the mind and is connected. When you're not expressing your feelings and emotions, then it will affect you in different ways. And it's whatever your weakest point is how it will affect you. When I've been stressed, in the past, I've suffered with irritable bowel syndrome, and also I've lost hair in the past and grown it back in just as quick time. But when you know what your signals are for you not coping, it's vital that you take notice of those signals and look after yourself as a family member or as a carer. The long goodbye draws in the entire family, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. And it can be very draining, especially if it's years. There will be a reprieve sometimes where they're getting better, and then they don't feel better, and they go into remission, and then it comes back. And this is the long goodbye. This is where there'll be peaks and troughs, not only for the person that's been diagnosed with the terminal illness, but also for the family members. It's important to feel comfortable with that going on, that you'll have highs and lows. You'll have altered lifestyles because of having to handle the highs and lows, the remissions, the good days, the not good days, the terrible days, the terrible weeks, the medication, the chemotherapy if it's cancer. And it is significant that the people in the family will change their lifestyles to fit in to whatever needs doing. Sometimes people will do it in their own way. They will do it in the way that's right for them. We all have our roles, and it is absolutely important to acknowledge each person's role and how they play within the family unit. and how it comes together. Always be respectful of each other, no matter what your role is, because each person's role is significant. Stage 2. Here we look at, stage 1 is the crisis. The crisis is when the diagnosis takes place. It disrupts your equilibrium and your normality, and it can bring up, for many people, cancer, especially, and anxiety. If people are feeling anxious, then they will be operating from that space of anxiety. Now, anxiety is when you're running around in the mind, trying to work out what you need to work out and focusing on future events, future things, if this happens, if that happens. And when you are focused in the future, it's very difficult to be present. But the crisis of the diagnosis can bring up all sorts of anxiety, both for the person that's been diagnosed as well as the family members and the extended family. The relationships can be strained, and it can cause a lot of dissatisfaction with your loved one. They will feel at some point alienated by the fact that they have this terminal illness, and feeling alienated not just from their normal everyday living that they feel that they can't do anymore, but alienated from their loved ones. It will bring up feelings and evoke feelings for all parties, feelings of guilt, feelings of resentment, anger, and also for some an injustice. What do I mean by injustice? They might be saying something like, why me? I don't want to go yet. I've got children. Why me? I'm too young. I've got too much to sort. I want to be here for you. If it's a child, why me? I've got the whole of my life ahead of me. Why are you taking away my life? That these feelings are real, they're genuine. For each member of the family, whether you are the one with the terminal illness or indeed a family member. In a terminal crisis, everyone is part of that grieving and everyone goes through their own process. The why me could come up in the family situation, especially for the carers of the family. Why me? Why am I having to do this when I have everything else to do? The injustice of it all, when somebody is not there all of the time and you're there feeling overwhelmed and having to handle everything. Conversations are important to have. When you have those conversations, to say, hey, I'm overwhelmed. Can you help? It's surprising what can come out and what support each family member can give. But if you don't say, the other person might think that what they're offering is enough for the time. And sometimes if you're not there, you don't see the deterioration as much as the person that's living there. So what you don't know, you can't do anything about. So it's important to have the conversations, especially if you are the main carer and you're living with the person that has had the terminal illness diagnosis. Those feelings of guilt can come up for each family member in whatever way is appropriate for them. Stage 2 is unity. It's when the family come together. The family start coming together to sort things, each taking the role of what they feel that they can give or what's needed. This involves a conversation. It's really important to have those conversations, those difficult conversations, because they're not the easiest and yet they can give you greater resolution. When the family come together, this can cause some challenges because families are complex And when families come together, especially extended families like the brothers and sisters of the loved one that has the diagnosis, as well as the children of the loved one that has the diagnosis. This is the extended family, as well as friends and really special connections. And sometimes there is a scapegoat. Sometimes there is a person that gets lashed out on. Sometimes there is a person that didn't do what the other person thought they should do, and they become what I would call a punching bag, the person that just gets all the lashings, the person that hasn't been there at the beginning, or the person that is not in the living accommodation of the loved one that has got the terminal illness. And the scapegoat is someone, maybe they're the black sheep of the family, maybe they've gone off and done their own thing, or maybe they've just always been the scapegoat for the family. Maybe they've just been the person that's not favoured in the family because they've done something different. But the scapegoat has a challenging time, and that challenging time can come out of all sorts of resistance of being there in the right way. So no matter what they do or say can never be right. No matter how they practically help or what they do physically, it doesn't seem to be enough. And this is very detrimental to the loved one, because all the loved one wants is everyone to come together. They just want everyone to play their part in whatever way they do. But the central character in all of this is the person that has had the terminal diagnosis. And if you consider that the person that has had the terminal diagnosis gets everything they need from each person, then that is how it should be. And even if there is a war going on between siblings or extended family, forget it. Allow whatever comes up, because it's each and every person expressing their true belief of their own grief. And anger is very much part of that. And also, if they become a little aware, especially if you're doing your best to be the good person or the good member of the family, there will be apologies. Accept them. And also, it's crucial that you don't make them feel guilty for sounding off at you, because each person will handle their own living grief in their own way. Stay connected for the person that has the terminal illness. Be the person and be the team for what they need. Families are complex, and complex issues can come up. Be there in whatever way is appropriate, and that will be whatever comes up in the family. And it could be that long life grievances come up that you probably weren't even aware of. That this is a time when people are at their lowest and old things can come up. Old things like grievances that maybe you didn't even know about, or childhood traumas. If there is anger in the person, then it will come out in anger. And it might not be that the anger is justified, or it might be that it is. But that anger is a normal part of the grieving process, and allow the person to be heard. Even if it's difficult for you to listen, allow each member to be heard. Because when they're heard, and when you truly listen without explaining or justifying, when you truly listen to what they have to say, take on board if there's anything that triggers you and deal with those emotions, because they are yours. But if there is no triggering, or if there's very little, then allow the person that is angry to handle their own anger. And if you're not judging them, criticizing them, or explaining or justifying, it allows the anger to dissipate, and it allows them the invitation and the privilege to deal with what's coming up for them, rather than transposing it onto you, rather than transferring it to you. It gives them permission, and it gives them the ability to deal with the anger that's coming up for them from where it's coming from. Some people get angry at everything and everyone, and it's an unexpressed and undealt with anger within themselves. And when they don't express the anger and transfer it onto others, and so you will see that person as an angry person. They're always angry at everybody, and somebody has always done something wrong to them, an injustice, and it's always somebody else. And the person that they're being angry with might be completely oblivious to the fact that they are angry. But at times like this, when the family is pushed together to help the loved one with the terminal illness, this anger can rear. And it depends on how you handle it. And sometimes it's much more compassionate to allow them to express. And when you allow them to express, it somehow is like a weight off their chest. It's been said, it's been done. And then everyone can go forward in the right way. It'll bring up roles of how you played as a child or as an adolescent. Notice how you're playing, and notice what feels right for you and what's not right. It will also bring up nostalgia, joy, memories. It can bring up things that were difficult times. You did this, you shouldn't have done that. I was upset when you did this. Allow it, because it's the person, each person will be going through their own grieving, and each person will be reliving, and things will come up for them. And it's personal. And it might be they bring up something that you didn't think was important, or you didn't even think that it was important enough to bring up or talk about 10, 20 or 30 years later. But they do, because some people have long memories. And it's because it's on their mind. They never said. And now it's time for them to air it. My invitation to you is to be open to listen and take on board what feels right. And if there is anything there, anything that triggers you, allow that to be a part of your healing and your resolution within the grieving process. There will be the legal things to deal with in this stage, things like wills and living wills. It's very important to have attention to detail on this type of work, because if you don't, then things are not sorted in terms of who's left behind, especially if it's a parent and there are children within the family home. The next stage is upheaval. Upheaval in the terminal illness. The protracted time can actually have a detrimental effect on everyone, and it's common for all concerned. Some people put their life and their feelings and their emotions on the back burner, and they do what they can to keep going in terms of dealing with the living, grieving process. But when things get put on the back burner, it moves into thoughts and feelings, and they become ambivalent. I should have done this, I should have done that. And it brings up the thoughts and feelings that perhaps they're not attending to their life as they should do, and they're attending to the quality of life of their loved one. It's crucial that you consider all of these aspects when you are looking in this stage, because if it's an ongoing duration of a living death, then it will be very exhausting for all concerned. When we suppress feelings and emotions, this is the time that they can come up for all members of the family as well as the loved one. And it can lead to the family falling apart if relationships aren't dealt with and solved. This is a time that you can be in a healthy family relationship, or if you're not and you don't consider the relationships and attend to the grievances that each member has, then it will lead to eventually the family completely falling apart. Stage 4, resolution. This is a gradual deterioration of your loved one. It's punctuated with good and bad. And simply, it can be temporary and it can be an improvement. And it also can have an effect when it's temporary and then they go back again. Allowing yourself the privilege of sharing memories, the good times, the bad times, is critical for all members of the family to come together, to share in the unresolved issues, to share in whatever needs to come up, to resolve the anger that will be evoked during this time, to resolve any indifferences, any jealousies, anything that didn't sit or make the family feel okay. This is where the family can come together and resolve all sorts of issues, such as embarrassment, jealousy, pride. It can also be a time of great joy. So notice and feel whatever it is that comes up for you in that process, because it will come up. There will be good things and there will be not so good things and there will be difficult things. But allow yourself the exposure that it is all okay. This is a time to heal for everyone. This is a time to come together and heal. Stage 4, you address all issues and you address everything. They all become reactivated. They stand in the way. They stand in the way of families and they stand in the way of your loved one. They stand in the way of you moving forward. Clear old rivalries, however you need to clear them, and whatever it is, clear them in this time. Come together in a space of love, compassion, and connection. And clear long-held resentments. You and the other person will feel so much better for doing so. Clear all reactions and anxieties instead of fostering on them and focusing on them. Moving forward, facing up to the undealt with issues is critical for each person so that the grieving process can move into a healing recovery for each person. Stage 5, renewal, the final stage of grief. It begins with the funeral. It begins with the marking of the loss. And it also is the marking of deciding on the celebration of life and how you celebrate the person's life. It's very different because the goodbye usually starts with the grieving process when the person actually dies. But when somebody's been diagnosed with a terminal illness, the grieving process is a much more long-winded process. And the final goodbye is the final part of the closure. It's where you get renewal. Take time together as a family to come together and decide what you do afterwards, how you celebrate the different anniversaries, birthdays, different times that were important. Come together and feel that it's okay. Whatever has happened in the past is in the past. And now it's important for the family to come together, to be collective and to be personal in their own renewal. Moving forward, it's a time of creativity and a time of planning. It's also a time for you to do everything that you need to do for yourself as well as your family. It's a time to sort what needs sorting now your loved one has passed. It's a time for the immediate family to come together in the right way for you and for them. It's a time to sort out the finances and how the home works. It's a time to look at the legal paperwork after the funeral. And it's a time to move forward in a way that is connected, not only for you, but for your own siblings and the rest of the family members. And in doing this, in coming together and facing everything from a practical place, as well as a place of emotional and feeling. It's almost like a relief when they do pass away, because then you are left with an emptiness of no appointments, no medication. And so you go back to your life. And it's a time for the people that are left behind, the family members that are left behind. The roles are diminished. And where do you sit in the role of where you go forward? And sometimes it can be that there's different situations in terms of living. It can be that the financial status of the rest of the people that are within the immediate family who are caring for their loved one has changed. And it's important to note that all of these things, as you go through the grieving process, not only for your loved one that has passed, but your own personal grieving process, your personal one and your siblings and also the extended family. They say time is a great healer. And after your loved one has passed, something very critical can happen. That all of the safety mechanisms and all of the support can fall away. And if it falls away, what are you left with? It's about picking up your life and moving forward. So make sure that you can pick up your life after your loved one has left. Make sure that there is something left of your life to pick up. And I always think that when you have worked together as a family and been together through this process, it moves you into a much more loving, kinder, and more affectionate, connected family. It has to bring out the anger, the resentments. It has to bring out all the things that are not right. And if you don't bring them out at the beginning, it will come out after the death. So allow it and feel safe to allow it. Thank you for your attention. It has been an absolute honour to deliver this episode. Please reach out if I can be of service to you in any way. Please subscribe to USA Global TV and Radio. You can find all of my episodes on Talking Heads under my name, Caroline Heward. Please reach out if I may be of service to you. You can reach me on my email, nomorestress@live.co.uk, or call me on +44 if you're international. If you're local, 07523 120 189. And I look forward to helping you through the grieving process. Thank you. Namaste.